Welcome to Storytime. River of Souls, the sacred Nile and the ordinary day. At dawn you step onto the ferry, and the Nile is more than water. It is the line between today and forever. Each oarstroke carries you toward tombs that face the sunrise, toward gods who rise with the flood, toward a life where theology is written in waterlines. The river is not just a boundary, it is your story's first sentence. But before we begin, let's pause while you get comfortable. Fluff your pillow, pull those blankets up tight, and settle into your favorite spot. Your eyes flicker open to darkness, just the faintest glow of dawn peeking in. You board the small ferry before dawn, when the Nile is still a long breath held between two ribs of land. The poleman pushes off and the current takes you. The east's first wash of colour slicks the black water, and on the western bank the cliffs wait like sealed doors. The old men joke that the west is the land of sunset and the east is the land of return. And you laugh with them, though in your bones you already know this crossing isn't only for bodies. Tombs open their mouths toward the sun because everything you do, eat, work, love, bring offerings, repent, turns with the river's daily spine. You stand amid jars, baskets, flowers, and bread, the ferry's planks wet beneath your sandals, and you feel the sentence that Egypt writes in water. Theology is a shoreline you touch twice a day. When you step onto the west bank, the rock holds last night's chill. A boy runs ahead of you with a lamp cupped in both hands. His mother follows with beer and a packet of natron wrapped in linen. The tomb's painted doorframe is cold on your fingers. You greet the grandparents, you speak their names on the breath that the river gives you. You set bread and onions and a few figs on the ledge, and you promise to come back when the flood is high. You are not bargaining, you are keeping time. The day grows soft and then blue, and by the time you walk back to the landing, the sun already rakes the limestone to honey. On the river, a larger barge glides, drumbeats counting its oars, from the first swallow of heat, that the season of rising is nearly here. When the flood arrives, the fields will wake in a single green shiver, and every woman grinding barley will say what your mother said in her patient voice, "Osiris is mended again. You learned it as a child, how Seth tore the good king into pieces, how Isis walked the river's edge and gathered what the water kept. You teach it now to your own child in the hour between bread and rest, and when you speak the story, you picture a body sewn back together with reeds and hope and crowned in the west, and you picture your fields, mud glistening like skin, seed in the hand, birds crying at the edge of a channel, the first tender sprout pushing out of a dark clod. You have seen priests plant wheat in a little model and water it with scented water, and you did not find it morbid, you found it correct. Each inundation is funeral and coronation both. You have carried a basket of grain past a wrapped figure painted green and felt that little spill inside your chest that is gratitude disguised as breath, because the murdered god is also the calendar, and the calendar is how your children eat. By mid-morning you are at the temple, for your sister has asked you to meet her at the sacred lake. The precinct stones smell of dust and unguent. Priests move through the court with wide, practiced steps, their shaven heads gleaming with oil. The lake is a green mirror, cut by a goose's wake. You wash your hands and face in the cold water that is Nile by permission and Nile by craft, and you watch the pure ones cleanse themselves before they grind natron, light incense, and wake the god's statue with words and gestures older than your grandfather's birth. You cannot see the god's face when they carry him inside. The veil is thick, but the sound their sandals make on stone is part of your day like the call of gulls. Before the month is over, you will stand among thousands as the festival begins. In Opet, Amun rides his gilded shrine from Karnak to Luxor, the music like 1,000 wrists of bracelets. The king's face, painted calm as Maat herself, will sway as he walks, and you will more than once lose sight of your child only to find him on your shoulders again, laughing, his hair hot against your cheek. Later in the year, when the beautiful festival of the valley comes, you and your neighbors will ferry to the west with armfuls of flowers and sit among the tomb chapels under veils of dust and petals, the children nodding with breadcrumbs on their lips. The river is not a barrier, it is the aisle between two halves of the same house, and your family crosses it with baskets the way others cross courtyards. Toward noon, when the market grows loud and the sun turns the bricks to ovens, you walk home past a scribe who has painted a small scene on whitewashed plaster, scales and a feather, a heart as red as pomegranate rind. You stop longer than you mean to. The Hall of Two Truths is never far. You know the order of the scene the way you know the order of your work. Thoth will keep the minutes with patient pen. Anubis will adjust the scale's tongue with the same care you use when you balance your ledger. Amit will crouch with the stillness of swallowed thunder. The desired end is not escape. You have never liked that word. The desired end is rightness, and the field of reeds, an improved copy of the valley you already know, waits for those who carried rightness like a basket without dropping it. You have seen the props in tomb after tomb, ploughs, nets, writing boards, a favorite chair. All the things that make order in this life become the furniture of the next, as though the gods want you to practice now for your own immortality by doing small things well. On the way to the quay, you see a crocodile on the hot slope of a canal, a creased log until it opens its yellow mouth. Your feet slow, not from panic, but from respect. You whisper a short prayer, a string of sounds you learned as a child, the one that asks Sobek to keep his teeth for fish. In the Fayum, his temples are strong. Here you give him bread when you can spare it. You are not naive about the river's teeth. A woman in your quarter wears a blue hippo pendant at her throat because Taweret guarded her labor and she likes to sleep with the memory of it. In your city, the dangerous things get titles. The river's furies are turned into patrons you can greet and satisfy, and so your fear learns manners. In the afternoon, a neighbor leans into your courtyard to ask if you will come down to the tomb maker's place. There is a new song carved on a wall, and the carver says you will like it. You go, and in the shade of a doorway, you read the lines aloud, while a friend tunes a harp with fingers stained by blue pigment. The harper's songs do not lie to you. They say, "Make holiday, none who go comes back." And when you repeat the line, the carver laughs and says, "So drink the beer before it warms." It is not despair, it is permission. Your wife will put on perfume tonight, the kind that runs honey slow in a cone and melts into her hair as the air cools, and you will pour a little oil on the threshold for your grandparents and call that too a kind of harper's honesty. You have read tablets from foreign lands where tavern keepers speak truth to kings, and you have listened to Egyptian singers do the same while a child steals a date from the tray. You eat as everyone eats. Breakfast. Bread and onions and beer that is more bread you can drink. Lunch. Fish, roasted, beside a canal. Dates. Lentils with garlic and cumin. Dinner. Whatever your brother pulled out of the net this morning. Your household's contracts sit wrapped in linen on a shelf. They are written in careful hands, and your sister's name appears as owner and seller more than once. She has taken cases to court and won 2 of them. When she tells the stories, she names the scribes who were fair and the ones who were lazy, and you remember the lazy ones in case you ever meet them. In your lane, women run shops, buy barley, rent rooms. The city's heart is not only male. Children chase dogs, leap canals, and practice writing on broken potsherds. You shade the eyes of your small one with your hand when the light is unkind. You own a cosmetic palette that belonged to your mother. You mix green malachite and black coal the way she showed you, and the day you learned to draw a straight line along your own eyelid, you gave thanks to the river for the water that would wash it away tonight. When you fall ill one spring, pain like a hot nail hammered behind your left eye, you go to the quiet woman who keeps her scrolls wrapped in clean linen, and she looks into your mouth and nods and says, "Willow in water," as if she were telling you to go home. She crushes bark and says a string of words while she pours, and then she lays a cool strip of linen across your brow, and you feel the bark's medicine traveling your veins like a small boat finding current. When your niece cuts her foot on a shard of broken amphora, the same woman uses honey to seal the mouth of the wound, and a spell to sweeten the gods on the child's behalf, and a suture so clean, your sister says, the scar looks like a stitch on a garment the house will be proud to wear. In the little basket she carries are lotus seeds, fenugreek, castor beans, instructions written in the slanting hand of her teacher, and small amulets wrapped in string that feel warm from her palm. No one in your street wonders whether the prayer or the salve healed you. You learned early that truth doesn't mind companions. On certain evenings, when the air is wet with frog song, you find yourself saying the hymn to the Nile without deciding to. Hail to you, O Nile, who comes forth from the earth, who comes to give life to Egypt. You speak the words under your breath while you wash a bowl. You think of cattle thick in the ribs, granaries scabbed with full roofs, courts quiet because hunger makes people loud. Your father would say, rubbing his hands after measuring out barley, that gratitude is policy, and you did not understand him until the first year you kept the keys to the granary and watched men lean on your door when the waters failed. To neglect the river is impious, yes. It is also stupid, and the word stupid has edges. Travellers come through like the river's own thoughts, carrying a dozen countries on their backs. They speak of the south, where the Nile breaks into cataracts, the granite steps that make and unmake kingdoms. You have cousins who served at Semna and at Buin. They wrote home about how the water tightens there like a fist, how the forts keep accounts of animals and ore, how the gold of Kush walks north on its own thin legs, while priests and perfume travel south on boats that smell like cedar. Once a captain with an old scar across his cheek told you the river is an international negotiator, and you laughed because it sounded like something a scribe would write to please a vizier. But later, counting jars in the shade, you realized he was right. From the delta, word reaches you of marshes thick with reeds and strangers. The story men tell at night about a family of Asiatics who camped in a place called Goshen is known around courtyards. The story has opinions about your river, about plagues, about blood in water, and fish belly up to their own astonishment. You learn to treat stories like incense, pleasant, powerful, and dangerous if you stick your face into the smoke. In later years, when the Greek tongue winds its way into your market like a new kind of bird call, when ships with eyes painted on their prows nose into river-mouth harbours, you will hear the name of a queen whose bracelets weigh more than a child, and watch Alexandrian letters arrive wrapped in the special arrogance of people who live by a lighthouse. You will not love their theatre masks, but you will love some of their books. And when Roman ships come for grain, your ledger will fatten with numbers tall enough to lean on. Masters change, the river keeps its job. You might have believed in your first years of keeping track that mayat, truth, order, balance, was a thing that sat on the shelf like your mother's palette. You might even have spoken of it that way, as if officials could fetch it down and put it on like a collar. Then came the thin flood, the one where the Ethiopian rains broke wrong, or the monsoon was scared off by dust from a volcano far beyond the maps your friends draw in wet clay. In the first months, the canals were thin strings. In the next, the jars in the storerooms felt like small insults you had to lift all day. In the third, people started using the word petition like a knife. You wrote appeals for men whose eyes were red with sleeplessness, and you watched a priest's mouth go flat when he looked over the riverbank and saw nothing but dry shine. You learned then that Mart is not a given, it is a project. It drips from oars and is stacked in bricks. It fails and is repaired. It is prayed to and planted in. You held your nephew against your chest and counted your breath with his until your own ribs stopped feeling like a cage. When the waters came back, you understood why the grateful men cry when drums begin for Opet. You also understood why a woman who never went to festivals before now spends all morning stringing blue lotus through her daughter's hair. In your lane, nobody pretends that the flood is deserved. You call it mercy in 3 languages because you are hedging your bets. Years pass. You carry jars and then you carry ledgers. You carry a child and then you carry the same child's wedding table. You watch a crocodile slide into a canal as if the world were a cloak he knows how to wear. You lift a fishing net out of the water with your brother and laugh when a single eel turns your hands to knots. You listen to harpers, you pay for spices, you learn to frame arguments for judges who prefer the second cup of beer to the first. Your sister loans a jar of Emma and collects it back with interest. She hires a mason for 2 days and refuses to pay for the third because he did not come. When he arrives to complain, she rolls out the contract and points with the grace of a dancer and wins without raising her voice. On one winter night, you lie with your wife, and the perfumed cone leaves a sweet, damp place behind your ear that you find on your fingers the next morning, like proof of a good dream. Every season teaches you some small grammar of the sacred. In planting time, you learn the shape of waiting. In flood, you learn the buoyancy of work, how a task holds you up if you keep moving your hands. In heat, you learn the worth of a patch of shade and how to make a friend by offering it. In harvest, you learn the math of gratitude. Sometimes when you are in the granary and the light slants in so that all the dust shines like the inside of a god's lung, you speak the line from the hymn again, "Hail to you, O Nile," and then you go back to counting because gratitude is policy, and policy is how children sleep full. The day your daughter is born, you place a small blue hippo figure beside the lamp and say Taweret's name with an awkward, sincere mouth. Your wife laughs, sweaty and triumphant, and says, "Good. Let the river remember who we are." You wash your hands in a basin and sprinkle natron in the water because your grandmother would be pleased, and you touch a drop of oil to the baby's head because your father would be too. The midwife hums something you don't know, and the child blinks as if the first thing she sees in this world is enough. When she grows, she will scold you for leaving your reed pens uncapped, and she will carry a contract into a small room and come out smiling because she has learned how ink quiets men who prefer to talk. Your life is ordinary in the way the Nile is ordinary, miraculous so often that you stop using the word. You gain a small scar under your chin from falling off a donkey, you carry a pail that leaks, you forget to bring a fig cake to a friend and bring 2 the next day. You give a coin to a pilot who steered your boat out of a mood the wind had no right to have. You light lamps in niches and leave bread so thin you can see your fingers through it. You dream of a field so wide the wind is a road and you wake sure you smelled barley in your sleep. You sit with a dying cousin and you do not speak of escape. You speak of order, of the field of reeds, of how his father will meet him with a basket and a joke. On a warm evening you walk back to the West Bank with your son. You buy fish with the first light and carry jars from a canal. You check a ledger at the edge of a courtyard while a dog sneezes in dust. You teach the child to write his name on a broken piece of pottery and he smudges it with his finger and laughs. When the sun falls, you follow another family to a chapel doorway. They place lamps in the small pockets of wall and the flames make a staggered constellation. Musicians pass on a festival boat mid-river, a flute, a drum, a few voices softened by distance. You do not know the name of the song, but the river carries it to you and it has the thickness of bread and the sweetness of dates. Night folds itself into the cliffs. The tomb doors, painted and patient, face the dark to be ready for the morning. You stand with your son and watch the lamps wobble in a wind that smells like stone. You remember the first time you crossed with the ferryman, the poles slipping, the current gentle and heavy under you. You have learned more names since then: Sobek, Taweret, Thoth, Amun, the queens and kings who borrow the sun's gold for a while and then give it back. But the river has not changed its sentence. It writes your days with the tip of its water on the same long line. "Listen," your son says, and you tilt your head because he is right. The boat's music squares itself with the beat of your heart. You think of scales and feathers, of ledgers and nets, of how things balance, when you set them down gently in the right place. You think, not for the first time, that if heaven has a river, it keeps time like this one. Flood and fall, dawn and westering, lamps and oars and gardens mended after every break. And when the boy leans his head on your arm, you feel the truth that has followed you since the day you stepped into the ferry at first light. In Egypt, you learn to cross back and forth until the crossing itself becomes your prayer. And Ma'at is what the water does when you let it, and the gods are patient because the river never hurries and always arrives. Later, when sleep pulls at the corners of the world, you walk home with the boy. You pass the temple lake, quiet as an eyelid. The priests will be awake at dawn to grind natron and stir incense. The god's statue will open his day with a gesture that opens yours. You whisper a last line to the water, "Hail to you who come forth." And then you climb your steps, unknot the day from your shoulders, and set bread on the ancestor shelf. You do not know whether anyone hears. You only know the river will carry the sound somewhere sensible. You breathe, slow and even, as if the Nile itself has lent you its chest for the night. When sleep takes you, it brings the field again, endless and green, where you walk along a straight irrigation channel with an old friend whose laughter you have missed, and you hand him a plough the way you hand your child a pen, and he runs his palm over its smooth wood and says, "This is good work." You look up and the sky is as full as a granary roof, and across it the sun moves like a barge with music you cannot quite hear, and you realize you have never loved silence so much. Morning will come with birds. The ferry will push off, pole-bending, and men will squint into light. You will eat bread and onions and drink the kind of beer that forgives every mistake. Your sister will win another argument with a lazy scribe. A crocodile will sun itself on the angled bank and not move even when two boys throw pebbles short of its tail. You will sign a contract, prepare a ledger, teach a child the difference between a good line and a crooked one. You will watch the water rise or fall, and you will make your heart learn the rhythm again, because nothing is given except the work of keeping order, and you are good at that work. So you live. You cross with the ferryman to the west, and you return to the east to wake the house. You lay flowers on stones and pass between pylons under banners. You sit by the sacred lake and feel on your skin the small change the water makes to the air, and you practice for the field of reeds by doing the day's tasks without cheating. You light lamps in niches and listen to a far-off drum and smile when the boy beside you falls asleep sitting up, his head slipping onto your shoulder, because love and bread and order are not separate. And when someone asks you years later what the Nile taught you, you say what your father said, his voice in your own mouth, that gratitude is policy, that Ma'at is a project renewed in water, that fear can be taught manners, and that theology is written in waterlines. You say it as if you are describing a doorway, and perhaps you are. The river moves, the sun returns, the doors of the west open to greet the morning, and every story you tell of Osiris green and mended, of priests bright with oil, of scales honest as a well-made plough, of harpers who dare you to be glad, of medicine that smells like bark and honey, leans at last toward the same quiet picture, you and your people at the bank, waiting for the ferry, arms full of ordinary things ready to cross. As the shadows lengthen and the stars begin to whisper, we close the pages of this ancient tale. In the hush of night, truth rests where faith once stood strong. Sleep gently now, wrapped in the echoes of empires long gone. Until next time, when darkness falls and another lullaby of a fallen world begins.